Dravit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm a professor who tries to help you understand what's going on in Ukraine. A couple of days ago, Tucker Carlson put out a survey talking about, like, what do you think the end game is in Ukraine? Are we on the brink of nuclear war? That kind of thing, to presidential candidates. A number of them replied, and I showed you in this video here, I showed you what their replies were, and we actually saw that the majority of these people, these Republicans, were actually mostly in favor of Ukraine and support for Ukraine. There was very few. There was only really Donald Trump and Christine Noem who were really anti, we don't want to have anything to do with it. And I showed you some of the nuances. Now, I want to show you a follow-up article, or actually two follow-up articles here, because what was really interesting is how people were reacting to DeSantis. Now, DeSantis is looked at largely in the United States as the alternative Republican to Donald Trump. But DeSantis's comments were less than satisfying for those that were actually excited about the possibility of him replacing Donald Trump, and those that also supported simultaneously supported Ukraine. So there was some pushback, and this was pushback by Republican senators. So I'm going to go through this and show you what Republican senators actually said about this after DeSantis. So DeSantis said that this was not in our vital interest. It wasn't a vital U.S. interest. That's how he framed what was going on in Ukraine. So Roger Wicker, senator from Missouri, Republican, said, I completely disagree with his comments. Now, he's the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, so that's an important thing. Ranking member is the Republicans' top member of the Armed Services Committee. Senator Kevin Cramer told NBC, I'd certainly hate to send a signal to Russian President Vladimir Putin that we're not concerned about him. And I'd certainly hate to send a signal to other allies around the world that you're on your own, because it could lead to a nuclear proliferation that we've been avoiding for decades. So no, I don't think it's in our interest. Okay, another Republican senator saying that. Then there's Senator Marco Rubio. This was my guy in the 2016 election in the primary. Basically, the big three came down to President Trump, Senator Rubio, and Senator Cruz. And Senator Rubio was my guy. That's who I was supporting. Rubio said it's not a territorial dispute in a sense any more than it would be a territorial dispute if the United States decided that it wanted to invade Canada or take over the Bahamas. Just because someone claims something doesn't mean it belongs to them. It's an invasion. Rubio added, obviously, he doesn't deal with foreign policy every day as governor. Now, what's fascinating about this is you're talking about Senator Rubio. He was a presidential candidate. That's his stature. He is also the senator from Florida. That's Ron DeSantis' state. So this is a very important thing that he's saying. Now, there's also Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who's saying that what DeSantis said is a misunderstanding of the situation. This is not a territorial conflict. It's a war of aggression. DeSantis has been a, quote, great governor, but in my opinion, if you don't get Ukraine right, this is a chance to stop Putin before it gets to be a bigger war, and China is watching. Again, the old school Republicans, the core of the Republican Party, this is the way that they think. It's different from the way that the populists think. I get that. But this is the way that conservatives, Reagan conservatives like myself, think. Okay, Senate Minority Whip John Thune, he's the second ranking Republican in the Senate, said, I have a very different view than he does, talking about DeSantis. And then he concluded that there's a diversity of opinion, as you know, within members of the party. But it's the loudest mouths in the populist wing that get all the press, and that's unfortunate. There are vital interests, said Senator Tommy Tuberville. We're basically protecting NATO and Europe. Now, that's correct. That's the way that it's framed or seen from the United States perspective through the eyes of most Republicans. Now, he also said, kind of speaking to the populace, that there's a valid debate about how far the U.S. can go in terms of helping Ukraine. Quote, we're broke, he said. We've got to have a better plan. And again, much of the time it comes down to, hey, we've got to get our own financial house in order. Then there was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, who said, I don't want America to be the world's policeman, but I don't want Vladimir Putin or Chinese President Xi to be the world's policeman either. I've never looked at our Ukraine assistance as charity. I've looked at it as self-preservation. I think that resonates with me. That sums up the core of the way that true Republican conservatives think about the issue. And then Senator Mike Round said anyone who's planning to run for president has to really get a full grip on this before they decide. Now, I want to show you a second article as well, because Lindsey Graham was really powerful talking about this. Lindsey Graham is the senior ranking senator from South Carolina. In the previous video, and you should watch the previous video if you haven't seen that, I'll link it at the end. In the previous video, we talked about Tim Scott, also from South Carolina. We also talked about Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina. They're all in on Ukraine. Here we go. This is Senator Lindsey Graham, who, by the way, is the ranking member for the Budget Committee, which is fairly powerful in the Senate. He said if Russian President Vladimir Putin loses in Ukraine, then the world resets in all the right ways. If he wins in Ukraine and the West capitulates, just like in the past, more conflict is coming. That's exactly right. When it comes to Putin, you either pay now or you pay later, said Graham. If you don't understand that success by Putin in Russia invites aggression by China against Taiwan, then you have seriously miscalculated one of the most obvious nexuses in the world. Now, Graham and a few other conservatives are even more hawkish than the Biden administration. Graham has pushed the Biden administration to send even more military aid to Kyiv. Graham last month called Biden's decision to rule out F-16 fighter jets for Ukraine beyond disappointing. It's been like pulling teeth with this administration to get every weapon systems requested by Ukraine to the battlefield, Graham lamented at the time. Okay, so I wanted to highlight this because I want you to understand it's not just the loudmouths, it's not just the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Matt Gaetzes, as well as Trump and Tucker Carlson, that they get all the airtime, but they're not the mainstream. There is a split. There's a legitimate split between the Republicans, between the populists and the conservatives, but the conservatives are really generally backing Ukraine. Okay, that's all I wanted to share in this video. Thank you for your time. If you want to help me in this video, please give me a like. You can buy me a cup of coffee. You can give to the charities listed below. Thank you for your time, and thank you for caring about Ukraine.